Good day, grade 10s. So in front of you, you see a question paper that is based from Kzn, grade 10, June, paper 1. So this is the paper they wrote, I think it was 2 weeks back or last week. So we are going to use now this Kzn grade 10 March 2024 paper for our revision. So the first question is a question that is based on the algebraic expressions. So we have to factorize now these algebraic expressions. So if you can see clearly, the first one, which is 1.4.1, you are given here x to the power of 3 minus 8. The second one is 2x to the power of 3 plus x squared minus 6x minus 3. We have to factorize that one also. Then we are given the third one, which is x to the power of 4 minus 16. So we have to factorize now all these three expressions. So we'll start with the first one, which is 1.4.1. We will now try to factorize this expression, x to the power of 3 minus 8. Okay, so this is now, they call the difference of three squares. So you have to factorize now this expression, which is x to the power of 3 minus 8. Okay, let me just first remind you of the cube roots. The cube roots that we have, for example, you can have a cube root of 27, can have a cube root of 8, you can have a cube root of 125. So these are the cube roots. For example, the cube root of 27 is 3, the cube root of 8 is 2, of 125 is 5. So if I put a 2 there, like 3 squared, it's going to give me 9. If I put a 2 there, a square of 2 is 4, a square of 5 is 25. Or alternatively, if I put a cube, a 3 to the power of 3, then it's going to give me 27. If I put now a cube on a 2, it's going to give me an 8. If I put a cube on a 5, it's going to give me 125. So we call these values the cubes. Né? So this is a cube, this is a cube. But when you put a 3 here, now they call these ones the 3 squares. So this is a 3 squared, 2 to the power 3, 5 to the power 3. These are 3 squares. These are called 2 squares. Okay, fine. Now, if you have now a cube, a 3 square and a cube, so we have to factorize now this expression. To factorize this expression, we have to open two brackets, a small bracket and a bigger bracket or a longer bracket. So I will try now to find the roots or the factors of this 3 square. So the factors of this 3 square will be x and x squared. So when you multiply x and x squared, you'll get x to the power of 3. We have to find now also the roots of this one, or the factors of this one. The factors of this cube, which is a negative 8. Now if you go back here, we said that a cube root of 8 is a 2. So we know that there must be a 2. Then what number must we multiply 2 to get 8? We know that number must be a 4. So because of 8 is negative, okay, let me put it this way. This sign that you see, which is a negative, it must come to the first bracket. This bracket must have a negative because of you have a negative 8 there. But now for this 4 must be a opposite sign to get a negative. So a negative 2 times a positive 4, it will give you a negative 8. But now we need a middle term here. So the middle term now will be made up of these two. When you multiply now x by negative 2, you get negative 2x. So x times negative 2, it will give you negative 2x. But when you write it here now, you must write it with the opposite sign, which is going to be positive 2x. So that's how we factorize this. So your answer for this expression will be x minus 2 bracket x squared plus 2x plus 4. That is how we factorize the difference of 3 squares. Let's make another example here. So let's say we are given now the difference of these 3 squares. This is x to the power of 3 plus 27. So the cube here is 27. So we have to factorize now this one. So the first thing that you have to do is to open two brackets. Then you know that you have to find factors of x, and you have to find factors of 27. So the factors of x is x and x squared. There's a plus here, so you know you must put a plus there. What is a cube root of 27? A cube root of 27, we said it's a 3, so you know we must have a 3 there. Then what number must you multiply 3 to get 27? I think it's 3, ne? 3 times, no, it's not a 3, it's a 9. Yeah, I think it's a 9. So 3 times 9, that will give you a 27. Now, if 27 is positive, that means that this 9 must also be positive 9. So that positive 3 times positive 9, it will give you positive 27. Now, you need a middle term here. So you're going to say, okay, let me multiply x by 3. I'm going to have positive 3x. But when you write that positive 3x here as a middle term, you change the sign to a negative 3x. So that means that this is now x plus 3 multiplied by x squared minus 3x plus a 9. So this is the factorization of the difference of 3 squares. Let's make now the last example. Let's say example C. You have x to the power of 3 minus 125. So you have to factorize this one. You know that you have to open two brackets. Then you find factors of x. So the factors of x is x and the x squared. Now you need to find factors of 125. You can see that the 125 is negative, so the first bracket must have a negative. What is a cube root of 125? We said it's a 5. So you have to put a 5 in the first bracket. What number must you multiply? 5 to get 125. That is 25. So 5 times 25 will give you 125. But my 125 is negative. That means this one must be positive. So that negative 5 times positive 125, it will give you negative 125. The middle term now, we're going to say x times negative 5 is negative 5x. When you write it here, we're going to change the sign to a positive of 5x. So that means now your factorization is x minus 5 bracket x squared plus 5x plus 25. Yeah, so this is the factorization of the third expression. So yeah, I hope you are following. Otherwise, you have to pause the video and check if you are following. Try to go through all of these factorizations. Now I'm going to do number 2. So check now what we are given. Number 2, you are given 2x to the power of 3 plus x squared minus 6x minus 3. So this is a polynomial expression. In fact, it's a cube. It has a third degree. It's a cube. So it's 2x to the power of 3 plus 2x minus 6x minus 3. We have to factorize this one. Okay, there are two ways to factorize this polynomial or cubic polynomial. The first one is by grouping. The second way is by synthetic division. So I'll show you ukuthi how to apply the factorization by grouping. In order for you to apply the factorization by grouping, you need first to check these two factors, the cube one and the cubic one and the square one. So if this coefficient with this variable 2x to the power of 3 and this 1x to the power of 2, if you look at this coefficient, this one is 2, this one is 1. If you look at their ratio, if I take this one, which is the 1x squared, and I divide it by this 2x to the power of 3, the ratio here, you can see that it is 1 over 2. If you look at the second two terms, which is 6x and negative 6x and negative 3x, if you look at the ratio here of negative 3 and negative 6, it's going to give us 1 over 2. So you can see that the ratio is the same. So if the ratio is the same between the first two terms and the last two terms, then you can use now factorization by grouping. Yeah, it will work. So I'll show you how it works. So you just have to by grouping. Yeah, so this is how it works. You are going to take out now the common factor between this. Yeah, you're going to take out the common factor between 2x3 plus x squared. The common factor here would be x squared. This is the highest common factor, and then you're going to be left with 2 plus 1. Because when you divide now 2x to the power of 3 by x to the power of 2, you'll be left with 2x. Yeah, it's 2x. Then if you divide x squared by s squared, you're going to be left with 1. So if you take out 2x x squared here, you'll be left with 2x. If you take out x squared here, you'll be left with 1. So you look at the second last two group. Then if you take out a common factor here, which is negative 3, so you'll be left here with a positive 2x. So that if you multiply negative 3 to 2x, you're going to get negative 6x. If you take out now negative 3 from negative 3, you'll be left with positive 1. So this is how we factorize, or this is how we take out the common factor from the first two terms and the last two terms. Now, the last step now is to take out your final. Okay, I double wrote this. Okay, let me write it like this. So I think my pointer is freezing a little bit because my computer is slow. So the answer here is you take now this x squared minus 3 and this 2x plus 1. So this is the last answer now for your factorization by grouping. So we are done with the first one. I'll try to do a second example, then I'm going to show you how to use the synthetic division. Okay, before we go to the synthetic division, let's do another factorization by grouping. Look at the first two terms. If you look at the ratio here, this is 2x to the power of 2, so I'm going to take the coefficient of 2 over. There's a 1 in front of this cubic term, so I'm going to say 2 divided by 1. The coefficient is 1 and the variable is x to the power of 3. Now what is 2 divided by 1? That is 2. Now look at the second two terms, the second last two terms. If you take now this negative 10 and then you divide it by that negative 5, the ratio here is 2. So if you get the same ratio when you take out the ratios of the first two groups and the first two terms, the last two terms, if the ratio is the same or is equal, then you can use this method of factorization by grouping. So you have x to the power of 3 plus 2x squared minus 5x minus 10. So take out the common factor now here. The highest common factor there will be x squared. Then if you take out x squared from x to the power of 3, then you'll be left with x. If you take out x squared from 2x squared, you'll be left with 2. Then if you take out the highest common factor in the last two terms, so the common factor here will be negative 5. If you take out negative 5 here, you'll be left with x and the positive 2. So that negative 5 times 2, that's going to give you negative 10. So then you can say the last step now, you can say now this bracket is the same. So you can say now take this x squared minus that 5, you group it, then you take this x plus 2. This is your final answer. That's how you factorize the this polynomial, which is a cubic polynomial. So I'm going to show you now the factorization by synthetic division. In other words, if these two now are not the same, then you have to use the other method, which they call the synthetic division. So this is how it works. So this is the polynomial, cubic polynomial. Look at the first two terms. If you take this coefficient of negative 4, you divide it by the coefficient of this difference. I mean okay, let me switch off my phone because it's making noise now. Yeah, if you look now at the coefficient of this x to the power of 3, it's 1. And if you look now at the last two terms, which is 6 and the 1, if you take the ratio here, you'll get a 6 here, you'll get a negative 4 here. So you can see that the negative 4 and the 6 are not the same. So you cannot now use the factorization by grouping. That means now you have to use another method, which they call the synthetic division method. So this is how the method works. So the first thing that you have to do, you have to find now a value of x, or a number that you can substitute the variable x, and when you substitute that number, the whole equation, the whole expression must give you a 0. For example, if you substitute x by 1, if this does not give us a 0, then that means that this one is not a factor. This is 1 to the power of 3. This is 1. Negative 4 times 1 is negative 4. 1 times 1 is positive 1, and the plus 6. Now, this is 7, 8 minus 4. So this is minus 4 plus 8. So it gives us plus 4. So when you substitute x by 1, it doesn't give us a 0. It gives us a positive 4. That means that this value, which is 1, is not the value of, it's not the factor of x. So let's try to substitute by negative 1. So you're going to test now all your numbers from 1, negative 1, 2, negative 2, 3, negative 3, until you get a factor, a number that is going to give you a 0. So if you substitute by negative 1, so let's substitute by negative 1. So I put now negative 1. So negative 1 to the power of 3, that's negative 1. Negative 4 times negative 1 squared, that's negative 4. Then this is negative 1, that is positive 6. So this is 1 minus 4 minus 6, that's negative 6 plus 6. Then what is negative 6 plus 6? That's a 0. So that means that when you substitute at negative 1, we get a 0. So that means that now x equals to negative 1 does give us a 0. So that means x plus 1 is a factor. So I'm going to take now this negative 1. I'm going to put it here. Then I'm going to create now this synthetic division. Go back to your equation. The coefficients of your equation, there's a 1 here, there's a negative 4 here, there's a 1 again here, there's a 6. So these are your coefficients. So I'm going to take this coefficient, that 1, negative 4, positive 1, positive 6. These are the coefficients of my polynomial. So remember, the first one was x to the power of 3. The second one was negative 4x squared. The third one was plus x. The last one was plus 6. I just take the coefficient of this. Net 1 minus 4 plus 1 plus 6. So I'm going to multiply now by my negative 1. Remember, negative 1 is the one that gave me the 0. So that means that now x equals to negative 1 was a factor of this. So I'm going to take now the first one. I'm going to drop it down. I'm going to put it here. I'm going to say, okay, the first coefficient is 1. So if I say negative 1 times 1, that's going to give me a negative 1. Then negative 4 minus 1, that's going to give me a negative 5. Again, I multiply negative 1 times negative 5, that's going to give me a positive 5. Then I'm going to say positive 1 plus 5, that's going to give me a positive 6. Then negative 1 multiplied by positive 6, that's going to give me a negative 6. The last sum must always gives you a 0. So if said positive 6 minus 6 is going to give me a 0, that means now I have reduced now this polynomial from a third degree to a second degree. So now this becomes your second degree expression. That means that this is becoming x squared minus 5x plus a 6. Now you remember you were multiplying all of this by, you substituted all of your degree, all of your polynomial by negative 1. So if x is equals to negative 1, that means therefore x plus 1 is also another factor. X plus 1 is a factor, because if you take now x plus 1 equals to 0 and you take 1 to the other side, it became negative 1. This negative 1 is the one that you substituted on your equation and it gave you a 0. Now we have to list now these factors that when you substitute them in this polynomial, they will give you a 0. So let's factorize now this long one. So x to the power of 2 minus 5x plus 6. So we need to factorize that one. We know the last x plus 1 is a factor. We need to find out two other factors. So x squared is x times x. Then this 6 will become the factors of 6 that when you multiply them, they must give you a 6. But when you add them, they must give you a negative 5. That must be a 3 and a 2. And the 3 must be negative and the 2 must be negative. So that means that all these now, x minus 3, x minus 2, x plus 1, all of these are your factors. When you substitute 3 to this, it will give you a 0. When you substitute 2 to this, it will give you a 0. If you substitute negative 1 to this, it will give you a 0. So these are your factors. This is how we factorize this cubic polynomial to this. So that's what we call now the synthetic division. So this is example number 1. So I'll try to do example number 2. You can pause the video and try to check if you are following what we did here. So this is example number 2. Okay, so this is another example. So let's look at this one. If you look at the ratio of the 1x squared and the 2, and it's going to give you 1 over 2. But you look at the ratio of this one, 6 and the negative 13, it's not going to give you 1 over 2. That means you can't use a factorization by grouping. So we have to now use synthetic division. In other words, we need to find now a value that when we substitute it in place of x, it must give us a 0. So let's try 1 and see. If you substitute by 1, what do we get here? This is 2, 1 squared. That is negative 13 plus 6. Now you can see you can't get a 0 here because this is 3, this is 9. It's not going to give you a 0, so you don't have to calculate this one. Okay, let's substitute now for, so try to put a 2 there. Try to put a 2. So if you put a 2, this is going to be 2 to the power 3, that's going to be 8. 8 times 2, this is 16. Then 2 to the power of 2, that's going to be 4. Negative 13 times 2, that's negative 26 plus 6. So 16 plus 4, this is 20 minus 26 plus 6. So what do we get here? So this is 26 minus 26. So yeah, we do get a 0. So when you substitute by 2, we do get a 0. So that means that x equals to 2 is a factor. But we know that this was x minus 2 if you put it by grouping. We'll come back to that one later on. So let's now say, okay, we do have a factor which is x equals to a 2. So let us now do the synthetic division. So the first thing that you do, you put that 2 there, then you create now your synthetic division. You take only the constants, which is 2, the coefficient here is 1, the coefficient there is negative 13, the coefficient here is positive 6. Positive 6. Okay, I think I need now to stop the video and continue in part 2 because I think it's freezing again. So we're just going to drop the first 2. So this is the 2. 2 times 2, that's going to give you a 4. Then 1 plus 2, that's going to give you positive 3. Again, you multiply 2 times 3, that's going to give you plus 6. Then negative 13 plus 6, that's going to give you a negative. I made a mistake. Sorry. 2 times 2 is a 4. Yeah, I think I made a mistake here. 2 times 2 is a 4. Then 1 plus 4 is a 5. Okay, sorry for that. Let me quickly fix this one. This is supposed to be 5. Yeah, so let's do it again. We drop a 2. 2 times 2, that's going to give us a positive 4. Why am I writing a 2 again? It's going to give us a positive 4. Yeah, it's going to give you a positive 4. Then 1 plus 4 is going to give you a positive 5. 2 times 5, that's going to give you a positive 10. Then negative 13 plus 10, that's going to give you a negative 3. Then 2 times negative 3, that's going to give you a negative 6. The last one must always give you a 0. So that means now this is a second degree polynomial. So it is 2x squared plus 5x minus 3. Then we add now that factor that we know, which is x minus 2. Because if 2 is a factor, that means x is equals to 2. But before it became 2, it was x minus 2. So we have to take this now as our last factor. We have to factorize now this one. Let us factorize this one. We know the last one is x minus 2. So we just have to substitute this one. So we know the last one is x minus 2. So let's factorize this one. So we have here 2x times x. So you have to bear with me. Yeah, it's getting very slow now. So maybe the words or the numbers are appearing later on after I have spoken them. So then we have 2x times x is 2x squared. So we need now the factor, wait, 3 and 1. So where are we going to put a 3? So we have to put a 3 this side. So that is 2 times 3 is going to be 6. So I'm going to put a 3 here. Then I'm going to put a 1 here. So that if I say 2 times positive 3, so the 3 must be positive because 5 is positive and the 1 must be negative. Yeah, so this is the factors of this 2x squared plus 5x minus 3. So is 2x minus 1 times x plus 3. Yeah, so these are the factors because when you multiply these two, it will give you a positive 6. Then if you multiply these two, give you 1. So this 6x and negative give you a middle term of positive 5x. Yeah, I think let me stop the video now, otherwise it's going to freeze now. So let me just stop. And then I will continue with the next question. The next question was on, let me check. Okay, my battery is low also. So let me check. The next video is supposed to be factorization of x to the power of 4 minus 16. I'll continue this one in the next video. Then I will have the exponents on video number 2 or video number 3. Okay, see you next video.